Good morning. It is 7:55 a.m. on Sunday, January 31st, 2021. I'm Christiana Ellison and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. We did it. Got through a month in 2021. And at the risk of a jinx, looking up compared to last year anyway. I mean, obviously we have a lot of COVID still going on. That's not great. But at least on a nationwide level, cases are starting to drop a little bit. Got vaccinations starting to happen. Better. It's moving in the right direction at least, sometimes, it's just a case of you can't always solve every problem right away. So you still have problems, but, it still represents improvement to stop making new problems. In any event, so that's good. I'm a little bit sleepy this morning still. I felt like I was gonna go back and sleep in some more, but I just didn't didn't go to sleep. Instead, one of the things that I feel like I want to talk about is Final Fantasy VI, aka Final Fantasy III, which was the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy that came out, years ago, released in the United States as Final Fantasy III, even though in Japan they had several other Final Fantasies in between, so technically it was the sixth one made, even though not all of those had been released in the US, and that's why it's Final Fantasy III as a Super Nintendo game, but it's looked back on now in the series as 6 because it was actually the sixth one. Actually, that just makes me want to look up, did they ever actually do English localizations for all of the others? I'm not an expert in the Final Fantasy series, I should point out. I've played several, but not all of them. But in any event, Final Fantasy 6, aka 3, is one that's been on my mind because a video game podcast that I listen to, Triple Click, occasionally does, book club style discussions where they say, okay, everyone, let's all plan to play a certain game and then we'll talk about it. And the next one that they're doing is Final Fantasy 6. And so I was thinking, I played that back when it was newish, but I don't think I've played it since then. And I happen to have one of those little SNES minis, the thing that looks like a Super Nintendo, but it's only this big, and it has a bunch of games on it. And one of them that it has is Final Fantasy III, aka 6. That's not confusing. I feel like now I'm curious. So if you'll all indulge me for a moment while I Google this, the answer to these questions. Let's see. The main series. Let's see. So there was three Final Fantasy installments were released on the Nintendo Entertainment System. The first one was released in Japan in 1987, North America in 1990. And then Final Fantasy II was released in 1988 in Japan, but there's been several re-releases. I'm pretty sure that, I think they maybe all have had US releases in subsequent remakes. Because I feel like I remember that 2 looked mostly a lot like 1, but it was just a different story, I guess. And then there was Final Fantasy III. It was released in Japan in 1990, but not released elsewhere until there was a Nintendo DS remake in 2006 And I feel like that one is the one where the characters had like jobs. There was a job system. And then in the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, um, there was Final Fantasy IV, which was released as Final Fantasy II. So on the Super Nintendo, I was thinking that, yeah, okay. And then Final Fantasy V in Japan only, and then Final Fantasy VI was released in Japan in 1994, and then titled Final Fantasy III in North America. I did it, you guys. Just that's a, you know, sometimes if you don't know, you can go find out. Gosh, I'm all distracted now because that has me just thinking about. Oh, you know what? I could go on and on. Let me finish the original thought that I had in bringing up Final Fantasy VI, which was that I played a little bit of it last night. And although there's lots of it that I think is very cool, the thing that has really sunk its hooks in me as I replay is the music and how iconic that music feels to me, especially the victory fanfare music, because even though even though I've played many other Final Fantasy games since then, when I think of we won the battle, I still go da na 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 na, and that's from Final Fantasy VI, or AKA 3. uh, so just replaying it and hearing the music from that one has been very cool so far. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.